yeah, thanks for coming to my talk. So yeah, this is the title of my latest the radical short project. And this image you see behind the title is the result of some beach combing I did on Brighton Beach last summer. I find beach cleans have become quite a popular way to contribute to climate action, as it presents quite a tangible and I think manageable way to perhaps feel less bad about our consumption. So I called my project Meeting Problems Through Tangible Artifacts, as I've attempted to design objects as metaphors that bridge our present needs and comforts with a future where we need to live in a planetary with boundaries. Next. Oh, sorry. Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry. Got the same, yeah, bookending it with the same image. So yeah. Well, the origin of this project, the inspiration for it is quite personal frustration with the lack of options for what we could call sustainable lifestyles. Some of us may have been standing in an aisle at Tesco's feeling the same, you know, as you see people doing here on the left. The complex value change in the systems we live in kind of also allows us to stay sometimes unintentionally ignorant of the impact we have through our consumption habits. The planetary boundaries concept, as you see on the right here, as modelled by the Stockholm Resilience Centre, presents us a set of 9 planetary boundaries within which humanity can continue to develop and thrive for generations to come. There's this tension between these two images that is kind of the main core driver of my design work, of what we ideally need to do and what we are currently capable of. Sorry. Oh, yeah. The ways in which we interact with the world and get our needs met is kind of designed, and it's made up pretty much, and it is really hard for us on an everyday basis to do things differently. As we know, there's no such place as away when we throw things away, as this beachcombing kind of activity shows, and the true cost of the things that we consume beyond the price tag are rarely visible to us. And when you look closer at the complexities of supply chains and their impact, you kind of start to wonder about who is responsible for this, and if we really care enough and have the time to find out more about these impacts. And also what I kind of thought about a bit as well during this project is considering these systems that creates kind of habits that most of us have little choice but to participate in. It keeps violations against human rights and dignity and ecological collapse in place. You could argue that kind of these structures give kind of consent to consumerism as an indirect act of violence and eventual self-harm, considering these 9 planetary boundaries and kind of where we're at with them at the moment. And it also poses the questions whether we can be good ancestors. So my artifacts are physical tools, kind of, as I thought of them, through which we can question our relationship with these fictions and to playfully provoke questions around the power structures, values, and assumptions that sustain the consumption patterns that we engage in daily. So I was inspired by Donna Haraway's implosion theory as a way to analyze an artifact through different value dimensions, like labor, material, technological, political, and economic, and historical, to kind of name a few. And I did a very basic little model of just a random shampoo bottle, as you can see here. And through kind of analysing objects this way, we can see how the values that our everyday objects embody, how they can be oppressive and damaging, and start looking how things may be redesigned. I was curious to see if everyday things can be redesigned to keep meeting our needs and wants, to give us our comforts and powers that we're used to, while still remain within safe limits and not to impact negatively on the needs and wants of future generations. So these are the output, my artifacts that I've created. I first pictured my artifacts to be what I call transitional objects, where they embody this liminal space in between. So these are speculative things. They're not products to be marketed, so they're just kind of metaphors. But it was when I read a paper by Aldemina Pereira called The Future of Work that I discovered second-order design fictions and how she uses them. So by framing these designed artifacts through this methodology, they allow the participant or viewer to reframe their relationship with the world around them and to critically reflect on these complex tensions of possibility and reality in a more direct way. So second order design fictions is a method of making the problem present and translating critical thinking into tangible objects. So essentially putting ourselves and what we're doing under the microscope, and the mundane theme of what kind of these artifacts all have in common, and kind of where they belong in quite a kind of a boring and mundane context, is intentional. I think the home context and everyday context give it a bit more meaning and a sense of familiarity in this whole sense making kind of exercise. So quickly go through my artifacts and the alternative reality where they belong. This Dandelion Latte suite, as I call it, provides a potentially locally abundant alternative to the unsustainable and fast declining supply of tea and coffee. As a discursive artifact, the Dandelion Latte integrates the familiar with unusual, allowing the continuation of a comforting ritual and synthetic caffeine to provide stimulus, while rejecting threads to historical and modern time extraction and exploitation of the global south. Instead, it points to a local commons, culture and place. And interestingly, while researching a bit more about dandelion coffee, the spring harvested tap roots, the roots of the dandelion, have a sweeter taste than the autumn harvested, which has got more bitter taste. So that might be something that resembles coffee more closely. The next couple of artifacts are called the National Veterinary Service Card, or the NVS, as a nod to the NHS, and the Council Tax Bill for Co-evolving Mutualism. These imagine a future where the effects generated from interspecies symbiosis and co-evolution are granted greater value and therefore converted into abstract financial metrics for the purpose of possibly justifying their commodification and the need for these kind of artifacts. So it's just, yeah, playing with these ideas. And the advanced interconnectedness meter shows real-time data for your household and compares it to the city resident average, highlighting the energy and CO2 equivalent consumption, sequestration and production. And an integrated Cantrell scale happiness meter used to measure citizens' well-being allows users to self-anchor themselves according to their mental state. And this is inspired by Matilda Town's work, Me to We to World to Back Again. And her quote, "Me here is the individual person, we a unit of collaboration, and world our home, consisting of the ecological system and human-made systems." So this meter provides a wider perspective and a sense of co-evolution through which a participant may contribute to and follow the collaborative process and progress to reduce energy and water use. And finally, the browser pop-up, browser warning pop-up for added friction consumption. So this is inspired by warning labels on cigarette packets and seatbelt alarms in cars. Do the Right Things I'm a Zero campaign, which I did a few years ago, and Postcards from the Future. So this is a voluntarily installed browser pop-up that activates when you enter websites that sell high carbon services and products such as EasyJet, ASOS, Amazon, and that may also harbour obscure traceability of supply chains, which enable kind of willfully ignorant or unintentionally harmful consumption. So it adds friction to an sometimes otherwise frictionless transaction and informs the customer of the potentially harmful repercussions of the purchase and queries whether they can meet their need for the product or service in an alternative way. And to add emotion to an otherwise quite flat and detached experience, an image depicting local effects of climate change to the purchaser is presented and a high-pitched alarm noise plays until you select your answer, a bit like this. If you can hear this, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's an annoying high-pitched kind of noise similar to when you don't put your seatbelt on in the car. And the perceived added anxiety from this experience by the viewer can be put in context with the possible precarity and stress felt by the most vulnerable stakeholders in this product's life cycle. So yeah, that was it. Thank you so much for listening. And if you got any thoughts or reactions or anything, kind of feedback for these ideas, do please. I'd be lovely to hear from you and to kind of delve into this a bit more. But yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.
That was really